ready for Thank you for joining us at another episode of HR plus Finance Expert by Sprout Solution in partnership with Talent Reach, which specializes in human resource and organizational development. Talent Reach primarily caters to the needs of startups and businesses which are experiencing explosive growth and have not anticipated the HR support required for rapid manpower expansion. They provide practical HR advice and crafts simple solution for growing enterprises. So how are you? Where is everyone joining from today? Just type in the answer, and I'm sure this is a critical time for HR. And so here at Sprout, we are here to give you legal and practical advice to help lead your company. By the way, we're also live in Facebook. Okay, so just to give you a brief introduction to who we are, Sprout is an HR technology company that helps your company take it to the next level in terms of taking your people. We provide system and support for recruitment, timekeeping and payroll, and analytics, all in a cloud-based solution to enable work from home for you. And now, we hope to be able to help lift up your team during this crisis. Okay, and next slide, please. Okay, so while waiting for everyone to tune in, I'd like to introduce to you the raffle mechanics. So it's very easy. So here's how you can join the raffle. Collect all three keywords and get a chance to win 10% discount from Talent Reach or a 500 peso Shopee gift certificate. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is collect all the three keywords that will be flashed on the screen throughout the seminar. Follow our official Facebook page at Sprout Solutions PH. Comment all those three keywords on the post pinned on our page. And we will be announcing the lucky winner at the end of the session. And of course, for the lucky winners, we will be sending the gift certificates through email after the session before 6 p.m. Okay? So, I think there's a first raffle keyword that will be flashed into the screen right now. Okay, so for the first raffle keyword, it's home. Okay, I'm gonna repeat it again. It's home. Okay, please take note of that and look out for two more. Okay. So, prepare your question for the fireside chat session later and ask us anything on your mind with regards to matters concerning our topic for today, which I believe is very relevant. It's all about learning how to manage stress from remote workers. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our first speaker. He is a sought-after certified trainer on emotional intelligence for TalentSmart, the world's leading provider of EQ assessment tools based in San Diego, California, USA. And as a human resource practitioner with over 15 years in experience in human resource management and organization development, he has occupied managerial positions in several companies from different industries such as 7-Eleven, the convenience store market leader, Yellow Cab, a well-known and famous pizza brand, and 24/7 Customer Philippines. So guys, let's all welcome Mr. Rolando Turla.
Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning. Sorry, this is still morning. So, thank you for the invitation for this program. No? And I'm very happy to host this program for you on how to manage stress, no, for remote. So, I think just to set the background right now, we are all no, experiencing a certain level of stress. So, for today, I'm going to share some of the tips and some guidelines on how we can manage stress, especially for those who are working remotely. So let me now share my screen as I start uh, my presentation. Okay, so for managing stress, no, for remote employees, no, so first thing that we have to take note of this. No? Okay, next slide, please. So it says here advantages of remote work. No, so remote work is wonderful. If you look at it right now, we can say that it has a lot of advantages. No? But of course, it has its own disadvantages in that case. So next slide, please. So a recent report from the United Nations says that employees are more productive when they work outside of the conventional office. So I think that's a reality that we are experiencing right now. But we're also vulnerable to certain disadvantages. So let's take a look at some of those disadvantages. Let's look at the next slide. Okay, so as you can see here, we are exposed to working longer hours, a more intense work pace, and then work home interference, okay, and of course, greater stress. Okay, so all of these things remote workers are experiencing. So that's the reason why, as we can see, we have to manage stress given this situation. Okay, let's look at the next slide. So working too much, no? Remote workers are more likely to be overworked, no? As mentioned here, if you overwork, if you work for yourself, you might be in a never-ending sales mode, no? Which can be really exhausting at a certain point. No? So why is that? No? Because somehow there's always something to be solved when you have an office routine. No? It's easier to leave what you do at the workplace. So when you work from home, your office is where you live. Okay, so again, there's that aspect of working too much. Okay, next slide. Next slide, please. So how do you avoid overworking in that case? No? So here are some things to look out for. No? So one is to set appointments on your calendar for the end of the day. No? So calendars right now should be a tool for you so that you can manage your stress. Next is to set up reminders, not to take breaks. I think it's an important thing to be taking breaks, especially if you are sitting down in front of your computer for a lot of hours. Next is to be clear with your team on when you're leaving. So I think specifying the time, for example, or the point where you have to be able to take care of other responsibilities. I think that has to be clear. No? Next is to create physical boundaries between you and your workspace. Okay, I think that's an important aspect. No? So your working space or your working table should not be beside your bed. No? So it's better that you separate it so that you can identify. No? Because sometimes your brain could not distinguish whether are you working or are you sleeping. Next is to turn off notifications in your phone and computer. No? So I think this is a good suggestion for a lot of us, no? Because most of the time we are really prompted, and whenever there are notifications in your computer or your phone, you tend to be anxious about it. No? So it's a good thing to avoid overworking. Okay, next. Prioritizing work. No? Remote workers need to be self-motivated experts at time management. No? That's the reason why I think the other area that remote workers have to be trained on would be on time management, no? Because we don't have others constantly overlooking our work, no? And managing our time for us. That's why for a lot of remote workers, one competency that you have to develop is time management, no? Because obviously remote workers are not totally controlled by their immediate superiors. So prioritizing work is an important aspect. Okay, next. How to make sure you get the most important work done. No? So there's that principle. No? So let me share that with you. It's a time management principle that I've always taught during my program. So it's called eating the frog. No? Your frog is considered your most important task, the one you're most likely to procrastinate on. Procrastinating is, not focusing on what work should be done. And another one is limit the number of tasks you plan to do each day. If you can have a list, for example, of things that you can accomplish realistically, then do that. And then install some distraction limiting tools. Meaning that if you're distracted with social media, for example, there are softwares nowadays that can track whether how much time are you spending on the task at hand or other tasks that are not really that important. And of course, manage your energy, not your time. Okay, so it's a very important principle that I'd like to share with you because somehow, we have the same 24 hours in a day. But what's important here is that where are you drawing your energy? Where are you most productive? So that you will not be stressed out. So as I've mentioned, time management is key. Focus on the most important task first, and then the little or the minor task towards the end of the day. Okay, so again, that's how you can make sure that your most important work is done properly. Okay, next. Interruptions. So if you have a family, if you have family pets and a doorbell. So the good news is when you work from home, you avoid coworkers dropping by your desk and other office interruptions. So the bad news is likely you have to deal with other kinds of interruptions and distractions. So whether it's a UPS delivery or a person from Grab, for example, asking for your signature. No? So again, this is doubly true when kids are involved. Okay. So next slide, please. So how do you deal with interruptions at home? No? So first is to set up a kind signal, no, to let others know when you're in a focus mode. Okay, so if you're in your work table, for example, put a certain mark that that you're in an office or working mode. No? And then of course explain why it's important for you to avoid interruptions. So as much as possible, make your make your make your desk, for example, something that will avoid interruptions. So also for young kids, getting childcare is a must. No? If you can, have an assistant to help with you. No? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, then of course train your kids and significant others on self-sufficient and occupy themselves. No? And of course be consistent in your working hours, no, as much as possible. Escape if all else fails. Try working out in a co-working space, a library, or a coffee shop. No? Especially if you have the chance to do so. In terms of your working space. Next, please. Now, one of the things that will also affect us would be loneliness and a lack of human interaction. No? So if you don't have family members at home with you when you're working, you might have the opposite problem, which is isolation. No? Even with internet access and tools like Slack, you might still develop what they call cabin fever, no? From being in the same place for too long all by yourself. So that's what we call the cabin fever phenomenon, no? Because we feel isolated, no? So we feel that we're just alone. No? So how can we deal with that? Next slide, please. So how to not feel isolated when working from home? Number one, include social breaks in your schedule. Okay, hold on. Sorry for that. Next would be to try working at your co-working space or coffee shops if possible. And then, of course, be more intentional about joining local groups or organizations. I think nowadays, as you can see, we do have groups or organizations that you can join even through online. Okay, so those are things that you can do. No? Okay, next slide, please. So there might also be some communication issues and being out of the loop. No? So when the bulk of your communication happens through email and the like, it doesn't take much for to develop what they call having some kind of using best effort. No? So the only solution, no, that you have in terms of communication as much as possible is to clarify anything that could be a misunderstanding and to be proactive in speaking up. No? So it's very important for us to look at our communications, or if we are out of the loop, to be able to clarify some misunderstanding. Okay. Next slide, please. Also, we might be affected by time zone differences, so we have to be careful about it. So related to being or feeling out of the loop. So some time zones could affect us, especially if you're in the BPO setting. We have again recommend teams to have a 4-hour overlap. Remote workers need to be flexible when working with others in different time zones. So this is one thing to take note. Okay, next slide, please. So of course, we might be also affected by technology hiccups. Okay, so nothing makes remote workers shake in fear when there is an internet outage. Okay, so for peace of mind, make sure that you have a backup plan. Okay, so make sure that you have some backups with you if your internet goes out. So a backup computer may even be a tablet or your cell phone, for example, should be charged, no, until your computer gets fixed. So those are your backup plan if your computer gets an error. Okay, so next slide. So of course, avoid bad health habits. Okay, so again, there's no magic pill for for any one of us. Okay, one app that I recommend for you so that you can be reminded, no, to take some breaks or to take, to drink your water or to do some stretching is Fitball. Okay, so you can look for it in the internet so that it can remind you about taking the periodic breaks. Okay, next slide. Now, it's very important for us. Let's now talk about this time the aspect of stress. So how do you define stress? So stress is the reaction of people towards excessive pressures or types of demand placed upon them. It arises when they worry that they can't cope. Okay, so normally our body's physical and emotional reaction to circumstances or events frighten, irritate, confuse, endanger, or excite us. So those are the effects of stress. Okay, next slide, please. So here's some of the pictures that you can see about, being stressed out. Okay. Yeah. So this could really visualize. So next slide. So stress is a part of life. So stress can either be acute or chronic. Stress can also be self-controlled. Okay. And stress prepares a person to react, no, to again to the causing event or stressor. No? And nurturance is another factor that affects the way people handle stress. So let's get to know more about stress. Next slide, please. So what are the different sources of stress that more or less you can take note? You have physiological stress, which again could be manifested by illnesses, lack of sleep, or nutrition. No? You also have what they call cognitive or psychological factors, having a negative attitude, belief, or our own thoughts. No? Social cultural stressors could be financial problems, relationship problems, and work problems. So these are sources of stress. And of course, you have environmental stressors, the heat, cold, noise, traffic, and pollutions that you are experiencing inside your work environment. So those are, again, the different sources of stress that we have. Okay, next slide. So here are now my stress management techniques that I'd like to share further with you so that you can, again, deal and adapt with stress. Okay, so the first one would be what we call the 3-way to manage stress: changing your thinking, changing your behavior, and changing your lifestyle. Okay, so let's try to understand each one more in detail. Okay, so next slide, please. So in changing your thinking, no, two things should be put into place. No? Number one is what they call reframing, and number two is positive thinking. Okay, so let's look at the two different techniques. No? So first, let's go to reframing. No? Next slide, please. Reframing is what they call a technique to change the way a person looks at things in order to feel better about them. Okay, so there's so many ways that you can interpret a certain situation, so you can pick the one you like. No, so one example that you can you think about when you say reframing is the concept of going to a happy place. Okay, when you are stressed out, no, look at what is the the happiest event that you have experienced in the recent times. So go to that particular event. No, so that's one way of reframing a certain situation. Even if there's a very stressful situation, but you reframe it, no, you somehow escape from that stressful situation and experience something really positive. Okay, next slide, please. So reframing does not change the external reality, but helps you view things in different light and less stressfully. Okay, it challenges your beliefs and put it in the right perspective. Because sometimes it's really our belief that causes the stress that we have. Okay, that's the reason why we have to use what we call reframing as a way of changing our thinking. So that's one technique that I will share with you. Next slide, please. We can also use positive thinking. So in positive thinking, we have to forget about being powerless. Okay, the dejection or rejection that we have, despair and failure that we are experiencing. Stress leaves us vulnerable to negative suggestion, but we have to focus on the positive. Focus on your strengths, things that you're really good at, things that you have accomplished, things that you think you can overcome. So that's, again, positive thinking for you. Okay, next slide, please. So positive thinking, what are ways that we can do it? Learn from the stress that you're under. Okay. One suggestion that I can give you is learn to identify what that stress is and be separate from that particular stress. Okay, we might be feeling a certain way, no, but somehow, no, if you are separated from that particular aspect, then you can make sure that you are learning from the stress that you're under, no? Second is to look for opportunities. Okay, so trigger your problem solving and solution orientation, no? So try to look for your solution for a particular problem, no? And seek out the positive and make a change out of it, no? So again, that's an important aspect of having positive thinking, as to be able to address stress. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, next part is after considering changing your thinking is to change your behavior. So what are things that we can do? Number one is to be assertive. Now, being assertive simply means that you're able to accomplish your task in the most diplomatic way and not being in conflict with another person. So being assertive means that you go out of your way, you communicate directly to the person, and avoid using violence or aggression to another person, especially if you're stressed. Okay. Second is to get organized. No? So one of the simplest way to not be stressed out is to make sure that in your table, all the things that you need are easily accessible. So get organized. No? So only the things that you are going to work on would be on your desk as you start your work. No? So avoid putting a lot of things in your workspace, for example, and get organized. So that's one way that you can address stress. No? Third is ventilation. No? So ventilation is such an important part of addressing stress because obviously when we are stressed out, our brain simply lacks oxygen. And that's the reason why we have what we call that kind of in emotional intelligence, that's called a hijack, no? Emotional hijack. When we feel stressed out, we tend to lash out at another person. That simply means that our brain is not functioning very well. That's why we need the proper ventilation. Okay. Another way to change our behavior is using humor. No? So some people, no, despite the most stressful situation, can actually crack a joke. No? And because of that, easily certain things become lighter. No? So changing that and using humor could actually make the difference when you are being stressed out. No? Another one is diversion and distraction. Okay, so I think also changing your behavior is doing other things. Okay, if you're normally addressing a particular person when you're angry, no, so try to create a distraction or divert your attention to another thing. Okay, so by doing such, changing your behavior, you're able not to address your stress levels. Okay, next slide, please. Change your lifestyle also. No, so how do you do this? No, one, try to look at your diet. Try to have a light diet as much as possible. If you are into smoking and alcohol, try to reduce or quit it as part of your lifestyle. Next is to exercise. Do it regularly. There's a principle of having a 7-minute exercise every day. No, do that kind of exercise. Allocate a certain time for it. And if you do it consistently, then you can address stress. Okay. Of course, sleep. No, I cannot overemphasize the importance of sleep in terms of changing your lifestyle to address stress. Okay, have enough sleep. They say that 7 to 8 hours is enough. So depending on you. So I think depending on your age, there's a particular amount of sleep, no, that you should have to address your stress. No? Also, in terms of leisure, have time for yourself. What they call the me time. No? So make sure that you have that as part of changing your lifestyle. No? And of course, relaxation. Have at least daily for at least 5 to 10 minutes self-talk. No? So self-talk is more or less going back to your experiences for the whole day. No? What were those good things and bad things that have happened? No? And giving yourself a pat in the back and say, you did a good job. Okay, so that's part of relaxation. Okay, next slide, please. Of course, taking control. Here are some strategies to reduce the stress. Okay, take control. Manage your time instead of letting it manage you. Try to use a to-do list. No, follow a written plan, set goals, and follow through. Okay, so your to-do list could be something good for you. Avoid procrastination. No, a major cause of stress is procrastination. Make a realistic list of things you need to do each day. Do the most important things first. That way, even if you don't finish the list, you can get the most important things done, as we've mentioned earlier. Okay, next. Join the crowd, even though you may think you are the only person in the world who is experiencing stress. The fact is that everyone experiences it sometimes. Okay, so I think this is a realization that we have to remember. No, not because you're experiencing tremendous stress. No, that you can see another person not experiencing stress. You'll never know that. Okay, so join the crowd because everyone at certain point really experiences stress. Okay, so everyone, no one is exempted. Okay, another one is to talk to someone. No, find someone you trust, discuss the problems that you have, and look for solutions. No, look for friends and look for people that you think can be able to help you address your problems. Okay, next slide, please. Next is to visualize. No? So visualize is to sit comfortably and think of a favorite place. Imagine yourself in a very successful situation. No? Probably closing a deal, getting a promotion, or probably something like that. No? So use that as a way to visualize. And of course, you can also use breathing. No? So sit quietly and breathe deeply and slowly. Continue for 5 or 6 breaths. No? It's very calming if you get an extra dose of oxygen. It increases the brain's thinking ability. Okay, so all of those can be used to reduce stress. Next slide, please. Lighten up, no? Take responsibility of your feelings. When you're angry, take a break and cool down before you act. No? So as they say, when you're angry, try to count 1 to 10, no? Before you say something. So that you can really try to think about first what you're going to say before you talk to a person. No? Also use the stress. Now, stress is a good thing at a certain point. No? Athletes use it to increase performance. If you are experiencing a small amount of anxiety, it can help to keep you active and alert. Now, use it again to increase your performance. Okay, next slide. So let me again, I'm wrapping up my presentation about managing stress. Let me offer to you a very effective strategy that I personally have used. No, it's called the 3C strategy. No, so the 3C strategy is to control, to commit, and to challenge. No, so self-control, commitment, and taking your problem as a challenge makes you hardy, and protect you from stress. Okay, so again, those are the strategies that you can take a look at stress. Okay, next slide, please. So as a conclusion to this presentation in terms of stress management, let me leave you with a quote. It says here, don't compare yourself with anyone in this world. If you do so, you're insulting yourself. Remember, everyone is unique. You have to accept and respect their own uniqueness. So this is one way that you can handle stress. And again, attitude changes everything. The way you look at your stress will change how you will deal with it. So I hope that with the techniques that I've shared with you in the very short time that we had, I hope that you can pick up those techniques that you can handle stress, especially if you're working remotely. So let me turn over now to Janine and Attorney Lester for some possible questions that the audience might have.
Hi, thank you for that wonderful talk, Mr. Rolando. I totally agree with the things that we need to change, like changing the attitude, lifestyle, behavior, and our thinking. So I think I'm gonna announce second raffle keyword for today. Okay, so our second raffle keyword for today is stress. Okay, I'm gonna repeat it, stress. So, just take note of that and then wait for the last one. So that you'll get to know more about who we are in Sprout. Please watch this short video before we move on the fireside chat portion of the event.
Know the status of their open positions, lead requests and emails, SMS and forms, and employees complaining about payroll errors. You've thought about some expensive custom software that would be a pain to maintain, or swimming in all the features of SAP or Oracle, or maybe even outsourcing your payroll altogether. Why can't you find a local, intelligent, well-supported software that caters to your needs as a Philippine company? Well, guess what? Here at System
I'm constantly blown away by the work ethic of young professionals. And that's a really powerful thing. And that has driven an economy that's growing at a phenomenal rate. On top of that, we have all of these challenges, like inefficiencies in really big things and really small things, and those are all opportunities for these enterprising people to make a difference in the country. And these people are working by and large in small businesses that are struggling to get by. It's super powerful if we can help that huge group of companies, of people who are the ones responsible for pushing this country forward at the amazing rate that it is moving forward.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that video. So, for the last word, we have the last raffle keyword for today. It is focus. Okay, I repeat, it's focus. So, we now completed the 3 words. So, just to recap, the 3 keywords are home, stress, and focus. Join the raffle by following our Sprout Facebook page and commenting these 3 keywords on the pinned post. The next portion of the event is our fireside chat. Prepare your question and just type them in the chat box. So before that, I would like to welcome back our first speaker, Sir Rolando Turla, and then our second panelist. I'm gonna introduce you to. She has 10 years of experience as an HR professional and has worked with different industries. She is currently the Learning and Engagement Lead for Sprout Solution, focusing in employee events and training. Let's all welcome May Oreiro. And for our third panelist, we have Lester Nazarene Ople, Sprout's Legal Counsel and Public Sector Engagement Lead and a Fellow of the Aureliano University School of Law, Center for Legal Education and Research. And finally,
Morning, everyone.
hi. And finally, our fourth panelist, she has more than 5 years of experience in human resource, overseeing recruitment, employee relation, and performance management in Sprout Solution. Let's all welcome Shang Trinidad. Hi, guys.
Good
Hi,
morning, Sir Ronald, Jean,
Morning.
and to our attendees.
good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, so I think we have questions from our attendees for today. So I'm gonna mention it one by one and then kindly answer it na lang po. Okay, so the first question would be, how important is the employee's psychological health and safety in the organization?
Okay. May I answer that first? Okay.
All right, sure po.
Yeah, I think it's very important because of the crisis that we have experienced. It's important for us to prepare employees for working back. No, so it's very important for us to consider that somehow people who have been quarantined, no, or have stayed from home had probably some issues, no, dealing with the new reality. No, so when they go back to working, the company has to also prepare them, no, to a certain extent by simply asking the question of how are you, okay, and really having the person talk about their experiences. No? So I think that's an important aspect, especially the post-pandemic when people are coming back to work.
Anyone who wants to add or
Yeah, just to add this one, no. In a company kasi it's very important to input or have the importance to give more on the mental health well-being of our employees, right? Just to share with you some of the engagements that we are currently doing in Sprout is that we do have our on-call psychologist, which is good, as well as we do the one-on-one session. Also, right now we do the meditation as Mr. Turla said a while ago. I mean, uh, in terms of the breathing exercises, we have that one. We give some activities like tip of the week, just to give them the review of what can the mental health being or well mental health awareness can help them ease their stress. So, and also we could also recognize our stress. Of course, like we do have uh, two stress. We do have the good stress and the bad stress, right? So I guess you should really need to find the solution, and the company should also help you on that. Or maybe even like talk to your manager is also good, right?
Right.
Yes.
I'd
I
like to
totally
add to what Sir Ronald and May said earlier. Let's also note that pursuant to the mental health law, and particularly DOLE's Department Order number 208, series of 2020, we are now mandated in the workplace to have mental health wellness programs. Now, there are two components, or there are more, but I would like to have kumbaga, to shorten the compliance with the mental health law for the workplace at least. There are two aspects to it. No? One is the information, education, communication sessions, which in Sprout we are able to do because of the email blasts. And then of course the second one would be the actual policies pertaining to employment, because we are also not allowed to discriminate against any employee for any mental health reasons. No, so some of our employees may have mental wellness conditions that and that should not be a reason for them to be discriminated in terms of career advancement.
All right. Okay, so thanks for that. So I think I got a couple of questions here more. And for question number 2, so what could management do to help its team members manage stress or when employees experience burnout?
Okay, let me answer that first. I would suggest for management to first review their job descriptions in terms of what people have to do. Given our situation right now, they cannot go directly as usual. No? So they have to craft a new or an interim job description or a work structure. So that's one way to manage the stress of people, so that easing into the workplace nowadays, it has to be on a gradual approach, so that people will ease their way going to the work itself. No? Now, with regards to burnout, what I would suggest for if you are seeing indicators of burnout from some people, I think just the same way that you need to isolate in a way and talk to them, and find out really what's the reason behind the burnout, no? Because somehow, even if, for example, they're coming back to work, no? But for some people, one of the reasons why they will experience burnout is loss of purpose and loss of meaning. No? So meaning that they're toying with, I'm supposed to get salaries and income from the job, but somehow there are things that probably confuse them, no, because of the crisis, and because of that, it could actually cause burnout for some people. So take note of that so that you can address them. Don't treat it like a factor to consider for giving more work to be done. No? So that could be the worst thing that could happen for a person. Yeah. So those are my answers to the question that was raised.
Okay, someone wants to add? Any thoughts on the question before we proceed?
Janine, yes, also for engagements, I guess burnout kasi nowadays is very everybody feels that way, right? The thing is, working from home doesn't necessarily mean that the interaction of our employees will be kumbaga stopped, right? But the thing is, the purpose of HR is to build the rapport or interaction virtually na. right?
Right.
So if I can suggest for our HR employees, like also we do movie nights at the end of the work week. I mean, it feels like you're not alone, or you feel still have this interaction with your colleagues, just like before when we had the normal work days, right? Or even like do Zoom meetings. Na definitely, it's a big factor that you can also create like a theme or make it just a fun-filled meeting. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna be very tight or very
Yeah.
corporate-ish. But the thing is, nowadays, we really need to feel sane right now. And the purpose of HR should be there as well, is to connect everybody virtually. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so shall we proceed to question number 3? So I got here another question. Should occupational health and safety must be aligned with labor law and employment standards?
Yep, I'll take that question, Jean. Yes, as I have mentioned earlier, we have the mental health law. Aside from that, we also have the occupational safety and health law. And both of these laws exist with other Department of Labor issuances, like the Department of Labor issuance pertaining to control of communicable diseases like pulmonary tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, and hepatitis B. So, recently, with the COVID pandemic, the Department of Labor and the DTI issued what we call an interim guidelines for workplace prevention and control of COVID-19. And if you were with us last week, we conducted a webinar pertaining to that topic. And as of yesterday, there was also 2 additional guidelines promulgated by the Department of Labor. So marami po yung malawak yung saklaw ng occupational safety and health law. Part po nito is the workplace itself, no? So aside from the workplace, yung physical layout, yung configuration ng workstations, ng electrical outlets, lighting, ventilation, there's also another component which is very important, which is the policy. Nakalagay na dyan yung mga non-discrimination clauses natin for career advancement, for hiring, for availment of the benefits. Kailangan lahat to aligned with existing law. And the moment that there is no applicable company policy, then what would apply would be the law itself,
Correct.
which has the minimum standards required for all employers to comply with. So medyo malawak yung sagot, but the general rule there is mental health wellness, the topic that we have discussed today with the help of Sir Ronald. This is one facet of overall employee wellness in the workplace. And we have to make sure that we comply with the minimum standards in Department Order 208 Series of 2020. Ito po yung ating mental health wellness policies and programs for the private sector. I'm not sure if if the Civil Service Commission has issued one pertaining to the government as well, but I'm assuming marami na pong innovative practices na kinokopya ang Civil Service Commission sa private sector. So I'm assuming that they would also have a similar policy na rin.
Okay, thanks for that, Sir Attorney Lester. So another question that I got here is, he mentioned that I personally agree that there are various sources of stress, especially during this new arrangement of work due to COVID-19. Based on my personal interviews to those who are doing work from home, trust issue from their superior is one of the causes of their stress. How can we address this? Because some of those who are doing work from home have superiors who are very conventional. They are micromanaging their people instead of focusing on their result. What will be the proper approach in order for us as HR practitioners to help our people to lessen their stress, which will be resulting probably to this decreasing of employee motivation? So I think it's a good question.
Okay. Let me first answer the question. Ano? I think in establishing trust between the superior and the employee. No? So first thing that you have to realize is that there is a working relationship that you have. No? So that you have to establish that you are in a working relationship. No? So you have to realize that a working relationship requires trust, and trust is not built overnight. So
Correct.
if you think that there are certain factors contributing to the lack of trust, my suggestions would be number one, break down your expectations into bite-sized goals. For example, if I'm the supervisor, for me to be able to build trust with an employee, I have to set up certain little tasks. And when those tasks or activities are done well, then I need to reinforce that with another person and tell that person, that, somehow there's a sign that I'm trusting you. Okay. But of course, for bigger tasks, then you need to be able to set first the expectation with the person. So make sure that you communicate how important the task is, what is involved in it. Okay. At the same time, one way that I've seen it effective for a supervisor is to be transparent with the person. What do I mean by transparent? If you're not okay with the output that the person did, no, so let the person know about it,
Correct.
no? Because it's very hard, hiding behind something. For example, that you're saying something, but in your head, you're saying it. No, it's not a good job. For example, so you'd rather, if you're the supervisor, tell it as it is to the person, but again, put some intention into it. Why are you telling that person? Because somehow, if you're trying to build a trust with the other person, your employee, you also have to take the side of the employee, whether they understood what you said. No, it's not just telling the person, okay, this is what I think about your job, for example, but asking the person again, no, what he thinks, no, yung reaction niya. So by doing such, yung things that I've mentioned, I think those will build eventually the trust that you have, and probably lessen the stress in a working relationship. Yeah. So those are my tips in building trust.
Thank you, Sir Roland. Okay, let's let's proceed to question number 4. So I share workspace with my son at home. We have the same space for my office work and for his school work. Do you have tips on how we can organize our space better?
Mm. Well, as I've said earlier in the presentation, it might be good if you're working from home to have a separate space, if you can. That's the reason why in some work from home policies, it is required by the company that, let's say, HR tries to also inspect your workplace, for example, because sometimes if HR, or if you're experiencing some problems with your workspace, and you report it to the company, somehow they wouldn't understand if they don't understand or inspect your workplace. So I would suggest that if it's possible for the person, but again, as I've mentioned, make sure that you put some limitations as to the workspace, especially telling your family members or friends, for example, that on a particular time you will be working, and you'll be doing remote work, or dealing with your computer. So you have to be undistracted during that time.
Okay, great. And another question from our attendees. I think one of my employees is showing signs of burnout. What can I do to support them in their job? Oh, that's pretty interesting one.
Okay, I have a suggestion for that question. I would normally, if the person is getting burnt out, I conduct an activity. I normally facilitate it in a workshop, but I can probably suggest it to that person. It's called the Wheel of Life. The Wheel of Life breaks down the different angles of your life. So if you're experiencing burnout, by doing that, no, it's a written material. No? So the person who's burning out, for example, can probably put a score. Like, say, for example, your financial, your personal, your family, your relationship, for example. So what aspect are you good at, or where do you think you're not really good at? No? So by doing such, you're targeting where is the burnout coming from. Okay, is it really the work, or is it sometimes financial? That's why the person might be burning out now.
Yeah.
So you have to identify. So you have to identify what part of his life or her life is causing the burnout. So by doing so, you should be able to focus on that particular area of life. Like for example, if it's financial, then get somebody to tell the person, okay, so probably you just have to have some financial advising. Or if it's about parang friends, then probably uh, get together with the friends, for example, and then figure out what's causing the burnout. So again, trying to isolate what is causing the burnout would be helpful for the person who might be experiencing such.
Okay, so thank you for that. Another question that we have here is, our employer expects us to deliver more because we are just at home. It causes more burnout because they do not consider slow internet connectivity and brownouts. How do we manage this?
Okay. That's a pretty
um,
yeah.
may I, I think Sir Ronald would be able to dovetail my answer, but let me answer from a labor rights perspective muna, ano. When we talk about working from home, this is what we call a flexible working arrangement. And the Department of Labor, well, let me zoom out. The labor code actually does not contemplate alternative work arrangements when it was first formulated in the 1970s, kasi predominantly industrial ang ekonomiya ng Pilipinas ng mga panahon na yon.
Mm.
With the advances in technology, the Department of Labor, the Secretary of Labor has the power and authority to promulgate rules that are implementing the labor code. Now, part of the rules that the Secretary of Labor has previously issued, we have a department order governing flexible work arrangements. In season 1 of the Sprout webinar, we were able to discuss the flexible work arrangements, but in the context of the COVID ECQ responses, no. So one thing that you can assert is that you can request as an employee, no, you can request your employer to talk about having a policy put in place regarding working
Correct.
from home. This is part of the principle in labor law called co-determination, where employees and employers are allowed uh, to negotiate on equal footing and come up with policies, programs, and activities that will help increase productivity and promote labor and management relationships. No? So you can initiate that, and I am hopeful that if you initiate it in the proper way, the proper framing, hindi dahil gusto nyong mag-slack off, but because you sincerely want to deliver your best work, even if you are working from home, I trust that your employer will be able to see the sincerity in that offer and be able to sit down and talk about discussing a policy that will be a guide for both of you to work forward.
Okay, if I may add lang also, no, with regards to that question, one suggestion that I can make, since a lot of employees nowadays are working from home, one technique that you can do as a company is to do a pilot of the work from home. So, what is a pilot program? A pilot program establishes that you will be setting certain expectations for certain people, but the pilot program involves evaluating the performance of that person of whether remote work or on-site working is better. So after, let's say, a pilot program, you can determine what is the best work arrangement for different people, because every person in your company right now has shifted in terms of their work. So there are different challenges that the person might be encountering. So it might be good to have first a pilot or an interim program, and then subject to evaluation. Then after evaluating everything, then you can already set out what would be your as mentioned by attorney, your policies about it, your procedures and all. So it's good to have first to do some pilot so that you can test whether such arrangements are really appropriate for you. No? Because at this point in time, uh, since all companies have been affected, there is no one perfect or best practice, as you can say. There could be different variations for different companies nowadays.
All right. Okay, thanks for that, Attorney Lester and Sir Roland. And I got another question here. What are some of the legal issues to consider in dealing with the accommodation of mental disabilities?
That's a fairly complex question, no? Preliminarily, I think what you should first understand are two concepts regarding mental health, no, in the workplace at least. The first one is confidentiality. If you are in possession of clinical diagnosis pertaining to the mental health of an employee, uh, the possessor is duty bound to keep that in confidence. Hindi pwedeng maging subject ito ng chismis, hindi to pwedeng maging subject ng speculation, because at that if that happens, then you are committing a breach of the Data Privacy Act, no? Second is the principle of non-discrimination. Some before the mental health law was in place, it's very easy for an employer for management to discriminate against persons who are known to have certain mental health conditions, and that is contrary to the principle of non-discrimination espoused in the mental health law. So if somebody is entitled to a promotion, to a certain set of benefits, then equally i-treat natin yung mga employees natin accordingly. No? So I think yun yung first two legal guideposts that I can share in handling mental health concerns in the office. I'd also like to share a third one, but this would be ano na no, it's very easy to fall into the trap of providing advice, no, and I personally I've had coworkers who and friends who have mental health issues, and I am not a licensed professional in dealing with it. So I avoid, on a personal level, I avoid telling them, you know what, okay lang yan, lilipas din yan. It's very
Right.
easy to do that, no, and sometimes that's not helpful. And it took me a while then before I got the education and the awareness na hindi pala helpful yung mga ganong statement, no. So maybe sometimes even the best way to be there for an employee is to tell them, I understand that you are going through something right now. um, Let me know if we can talk about work, or do you need some more time, no? Some
Right.
companies who are more progressive actually offer a mental health leave, a mental wellness leave, no? If your company can accommodate that in its finances and operations, it would be a good idea to do so. But again, I go back to the mental health wellness law. May law na pinromulgate, may department order na pinromulgate. Please go through that policy so that you can be guided as to how you will draft your company policy that will be the guide for both employers and employees in dealing with mental health in the workplace.
Thanks, Attorney Lester. Okay, another question from one of our attendees. Some of my co-managers are very good at pointing fingers. So, what are your tips and guidelines that will help me with this concern?
Okay. Well, that seems to be a rant, ano,
Yeah.
from that person, ano. So, well, blaming, for example, or pointing fingers is a manifestation. Psychologically, we considered it yung meron tayong concept of parang locus of control, no. So, locus of control is either you can be internal or externally may locus of control. So, when you say internal control, that means that you attribute your decision according to how you decide upon it. Okay, external locus of control means that you attribute everything, whether it's good or bad, to outside factors, which is basically, so yung behavior of pointing fingers is external locus of control. So that means that if you are experiencing such in the company, make sure that you ask the person of concrete evidences or facts, no? Because a lot of times when you're blaming a
Right.
person, it's an assumption. You're not yet sure, no? So the easiest way for you to do that is to ask properly, no, and respectfully, what are evidences that the person can say why such is to be, given to me as, the reason why I. And siguro the second thing that I would suggest is try to be more solutions oriented rather than problem oriented. No? So if you're a
Agree.
person who's blaming, no, so instead of asking the person who, no, ask the person what can we do, no? Kasi a lot of times, diba, a blaming person would always identify who is the person to blame, no? So instead of asking that question, throw to that person the question, what can we do regarding this situation? So that will probably stop the blaming.
I totally agree with that one. So another question is, as an HR, any suggestions on how we can reach out to those employees living on their own, families that are in the provinces, so that they won't feel isolated? Oh, this is a good question.
Yeah. My suggestion for that one is to have constant meetings, even if it's just online or through phone, for example. Having that kind of conversation will keep the person sane, and feel connected, no? Because I think the reason why people will feel disconnected is, they don't have anyone to talk to into the company. So of course, the first person could be HR, but the company could also establish sort of like a committee that can reach out, aside from HR. So HR could be the first line, and then identify probably a group of people, and those group of people can reach out to certain people. Yeah. So by doing so, they can have that kind of parang blanket of security that they're still in touch with the company. So somehow, it might be also good, for example, if in normal circumstances, let's say, diba, for example, if somebody higher in the organization would call you, for example, that would be a good thing, right? Let's say a vice president, a president, for example, if that matter. If that person even asks you, oh, how are you, for example, that's already a sign that that you're being reached out, that the company is concerned about you. So somehow, you have to do that if you're avoiding isolation.
Also,
Okay.
if I may add, Janine, yeah.
Yeah.
So here in Sprout, we as an HR, we also practice that one, pagmamalasakit or compassion with our employees. It might be a very small thing for others, but as an HR practitioner, right, you really need to be 24/7 on call with our employees. We're trying to avoid the stigma that HR is more on employer related or more, but we are really more on the middle, which is our clients are the
Like,
employees, right? So also, if I may add as well, like in terms of what Mr. Rolando told us is that it would be better na meron tayong nasa taas na someone to talk to, like vice president, right? Here in Sprout, we usually do that. Even our CEO, we have these kinds of videos from him, and then there is also transparency here in Sprout. So I believe the one key takeaway here is to practice radical candor and transparency.
all right. Okay, I think our time is up for this panel session. Thank you, Attorney Lester, Mr. Rolando, and May for your informative inputs. Okay, so next, we would like to present our special guest with a certificate of appreciation and a token which we'll be giving after the webinar. Thank you so much, Sir Ronaldo, for that inspiring talk on how to manage stress. Okay,
Thank you,
and
Sir
also
Ronald.
Also, thank you.
thank you, sir. And thank you also to our event partner, Talent Reach, which specializes in human resource and organizational development. Again, Talent Reach primarily caters to the needs of startups and businesses which are experiencing explosive growth and have not anticipated the HR support required for rapid manpower expansion. They provide practical HR advice and craft simple solutions for growing enterprises. And next, again with our Sprout Rescue Kit, and also I'd like to announce that you can still get it. All the HR help that you need. So what we offer you Sprout Rescue Kit is, of course, our free access to all our modules, HR and payroll modules, as well as our Instacash, and your free access to our BCP expert. You can sign up now, or you can see the link in the screen, and or also you can contact me for any details. Okay, so for the moment that we've all been waiting for, I'd like to announce to you the 4 raffle winners. I think we have it already. Okay, So the winners for 10% of this, the 10% off discount gift certificate winners is Camille Santos and Debbie Lumixi. Yay! Congratulations, guys! And for the winners of 500 pesos Shopee GC is Joey Sayanta and Richard T. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. So what you can do for the winners, please type your email address in the Zoom chat. And so that we can send you the Disney code through email. Thank you everyone for participating. And by the way, we can also send you the e-certificates for attending this session. Here is the instruction on how to get in. So just email our request at info.ph. Please indicate your full name, company, and position. And also follow our social media pages and use hashtag #OverWithProud to be updated on our events. See you on our next webinar on Thursday, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a nice day.